2, 1.
I'd like to call this meeting of the CBPAC to order. First, just do a roll call, and I'll start on my left here.
Suzanne Wilson, alternate for Sean Dugan with East Bay Parks.
Eric Hugh for Transpec. Bill Pinkham for WICTAC.
Robert Sarmiento, Contra Costa County.
Ole Olson, representing District 5, Federal Glover.
Corey Riley representing WICTAC.
All right, thank you. Next, go to.
Let's get the rest.
Oh, we'll get the. Okay, we'll have staff here.
James Hinkamp, Associate Transportation Planner for CCTA and Committee Liaison.
Jackie Reyes, Administrative Assistant in the Planning Department.
Jamar Stamps, Contra Costa County Senior Planner.
Go ahead and announce it. Yeah.
Natalie Emmerich, intern for CCTA.
All right, thank you. We'll go to item B, public comment. Any members of the public here with comments?
No speaker code to speak of.
All right, thank you. We'll go to item C, approval of the minutes. Approval of the minutes for approval of the summary of actions from the May 20, 2019 CBPAC meeting.
So second.
All right,
Hang on, sorry. I'm not going to vote on the minutes. I'm going to abstain, but the member list might need to be updated on the agenda. Joanna Pollock's no longer a member for WICTAC.
Okay, we'll make.
It's me now.
Okay, we'll make that change. All right, we have a motion from Bill and a second from Eric. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, opposed? All right, that item passes.
And I'm abstaining.
Abstaining. Oh, item passes with one abstention. Thank you. All right, regular agenda items. Item 1, update on the Iron Horse Trail Active Transportation Corridor Study. We have Jamar Stamps here from the county to present on that.
Good morning again. My name is Jamar Stamps, Senior Planner with Contra Costa County in the Transportation Planning section. I'm going to give a quick presentation of our status on the Iron Horse Corridor Active Transportation Study. It's a pretty quick presentation, but if you have any questions or comments while I'm going through it, please don't hesitate to stop me, and we can go ahead and address those. And so before I get into the presentation while we're dialing it up, I want to mention real quickly that we are still on track to, well, we've slipped on the schedule just a little bit, and so our original time to end was looking to be around December this year, but we may be leaking into next year a little bit. We had some contract delays in the beginning of the project that kind of added to the timeline. So, but other than that, the tasks are carrying on very well. We're doing an extensive amount of public outreach. That's kind of the bulk of the expense in the study, is making sure that we nail down our collaboration with our stakeholders and also members of the public, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about that in the presentation. So with that, I'll go ahead and dive into the slides. So in 2017, the county began conceptualizing a plan that would explore opportunities and constraints for further developing the active transportation features within the Iron Horse Corridor. The county knew the study would need to be highly collaborative, as the scope of the study would cover the entire length of the study corridor within Contra Costa County, which is approximately 23 miles, from the Alameda County line all the way up to State Route 4. And the need to involve many stakeholders, such as all the corridor cities, the East Bay Regional Park District, the Transportation Authority, utility companies, advocacy, and other non-governmental organizations, was highly necessary. The county was awarded a CCTA Transportation for Livable Communities grant in 2017 in the amount of $350,000, and the county later contracted with Alta Planning and Design to assist in developing the study. Alta's recent experience in developing a similar corridor analysis, they just completed one in the Coachella Valley called the CV Link study. It's an approximately 50-mile alternative transportation corridor for bikes and peds and low-speed electric vehicles. The first segment of the CV Link was actually completed and opened in February 2018, if anybody's interested in what this corridor could eventually look like one day. The Iron Horse Corridor study is expected, as I mentioned, to be completed around late 2019, early 2020. So this slide basically just illustrates the length of the corridor. As previously mentioned, the study scope encompasses the entire length of the Iron Horse Trail within Contra Costa County, from State Route 4 in Concord to the county line where we meet Alameda. As is evident, the corridor passes through many cities and varies in terms of the trail profile. In other words, the width of the corridor, access to the trail from neighboring communities, other amenities, etc. So robust public outreach and deep collaboration with stakeholders is a high priority for the study. The overall goals of the study include developing a vision for the Iron Horse Trail as an active transportation corridor that maximizes safety and accommodates all users of all abilities to the extent feasible. To achieve this, the study will evaluate options for greater user separation, expanding modes permitted on the trail to attract more users, providing improved access and connectivity between neighborhoods, destinations, and improving street trail crossings to help travel throughput and flow. The study will also include evaluation criteria to weigh these options and qualitatively select the most feasible and effective alternatives. And above all else, consensus building among the stakeholders is key to achieve the desired study outcomes. After kicking off the project, we had our first TAC meeting in October 2018. Attendees included staff from the Contra Costa Transportation Authority, 501 Contra Costa, Danville, Concord, Walnut Creek, San Ramon, and the Park District. County staff has also met with and been providing updates to the Iron Horse Corridor Management Program Advisory Committee. This committee was authorized by the Board of Supervisors in July 1997 and assists the county in developing a management program for the Iron Horse Corridor. It's also currently staffed by the county. We also had we had a trail bike ride in December 2018 that Alta hosted. I didn't attend personally, but I hear it was very successful. We had a lot of people come out and ride the trail to get the actual physical profile of the trail. We also had great meetings with the Center for Independent Living and Bay Area Outreach and Recreation Program. Representatives from both of those organizations gave us a wealth of insight about how the study can help address the needs of our senior population and users with accessibility needs. In March 2019, we had our second Technical Advisory Committee meeting to discuss the existing conditions and corridor analysis, which was referenced in your staff report and available on the project website, both of those documents. We also met with the San Ramon Transportation Demand Management Committee earlier this year. And also in April, we had a table at the food truck event that's right out here in Contra Costa Center. We received a tremendous amount of feedback from foot traffic through the area and passed out what are called rack cards for the study, basically small kind of hard cards that advertise the study website. And in May, we held outreach events at Pleasant Hill Middle School and tabled at Bike to Work Day in San Ramon. Another important outreach tool is our interactive web map. We've collected over 200 comments and over 3 times that amount of traffic to the site. Users can provide comments on segments or crossings and also vote for any of the existing comments if they agree. After the presentation, if it's okay with staff, we can try to demo the website so you can see how it works, but it's pretty intuitive. Once you get in there, you can basically just select any of the 4 options on the left-hand side of the screen in that column to activate that comment for any section or intersection or corridor segment in the study area, or you can isolate a section of the study corridor and make your own unique comment, or like I mentioned, you can vote on comments that were already placed. But we've had a great amount of success with getting feedback with this tool. It's still up now. We don't have a deadline for when it's going to be deactivated, but if I had to venture a guess, I would say our outreach activity probably will start to wrap up around the end of summer. So upcoming events and tasks, this coming July 27th, we'll be having an open outdoor public workshop at the San Ramon Community Center from 9 a.m. to 12. We'll be set up right on the Iron Horse Trail and have some information in the community center as well. And then the very next day, on Sunday, July 28th, we'll hold a similar type of workshop, but just in a different location and in the same time frame. And this will be at the intersection of the Iron Horse Trail and the Contra Costa Canal Trail, not too far from here. As far as technical tasks go, we're completing our base mapping of the corridor, which, as you can imagine, given the scope of it, can take some time. And so we're wrapping that up right now, and it'll include information like right-of-way boundaries, existing features, easements for utility companies and such, and also the topography. We'll also be evaluating the operation of shared autonomous vehicles within the corridor as a concept, and understandably, this gives a lot of folks heartburn when they hear this concept even being mentioned. But one of the things that I think is critical to keep in mind about the operation of any shared or any motorized vehicles in the corridor is that this study is only looking at options that can feasibly separate that mode entirely from non-motorized modes. In addition, if you're used to riding the trail, you'll know that some segments of the trail are very narrow and basically as wide, if not a little bit wider, than the 10-foot paved path that the Park District maintains. But other sections of the corridor are up to 60 feet wide, and it's only in these areas where there is the most expansive amount of room that we would be considering these types of connections. But once that technical memorandum is completed, we'll also be sharing it with our TAC and then putting it on our website. And then lastly, concept development analysis will come towards the end of the study when we actually put together concepts for improving intersections or improving segments of the corridor so that we can improve ridership and also throughput. So that's my presentation. My contact information is available there. If you have any questions later on, or if you have any questions or comments now, I'd be happy to take them. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jamar. Does any of the CBPAC members have any questions? All right, Bruce?
Yeah, so I understand and appreciate the need for moving more people who can't go under their own power, who are used to using motorized wheelchairs with air conditioning and sheet metal covers. But your statement about some segments of the Iron Horse Trail corridor are not much wider than the existing 10-foot wide path. So how are we going to get the autonomous vehicles through there with some kind of a separation between the muscle users and the sit-back users?
Yeah, that's a great question. The way that I envision the outcome of this deliverable happening is that wherever space for shared autonomous vehicles is recommended, it'll only be in the sections of the corridor where they're the widest. And so where there's like 60 feet worth of width, where they may only be 10 feet of the paved path for non-motorized users, you can accommodate that separated facility in another section of that corridor, in another lane inside of that 60-foot wide corridor. The other thing to remember too is that because of the very point that you brought up, it's likely completely infeasible that shared autonomous vehicles can travel the entire length of the corridor. There are just some sections that you can't do it. And so the shared autonomous vehicles traveling in this corridor really are looked at as sort of a neighborhood connection. So to go from one section of Danville to San Ramon, or from Bishop Ranch to another section of Alamo, they're going to be relatively short connections, but almost too long to walk, those kinds of connections. But not the purpose of it will not be to look to try to connect Concord to the Alameda County line, to the Tri-Valley. That's not going to be possible.
Through the chair, I've heard rumors that there's talk of having a gondola system maybe running from the Pleasant Hill BART to Bishop Ranch to Dublin BART, and that it would potentially provide the amount of capacity similar to a traffic lane on the freeway, assuming the freeway is all clogged up. Could you say something about that? I got no problem with it if it's vertically separated.
Yeah, I don't have any information on that. I don't even know who would be taking the lead on that study. If something like that ever did come to fruition, or even if the concept started to materialize, I would hope that we can incorporate some of that information into our study, but as of right now, I don't have any insight on that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you, Jamar.
Welcome. Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to item number 2, an update on the Caltrans District 4 pedestrian plan. James?
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to try to tee up the next website that's relevant to this item in 30 seconds or less.
Do we get a motion on that item?
Is a motion required?
Well, actually, in this case, Jackie is correct if there's any feedback, but if the committee is satisfied with the level of discussion at this point, that's fine too. So if there's just consensus that they've received the information that they consider satisfactory at this point.
Yeah, I think we're okay.
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 Okay. Thanks again, Chair and the committee. This item is an update for the committee's information regarding an ongoing effort by the Caltrans District 4 Bicycle and Pedestrian Branch. They are in the process of developing a district-wide pedestrian plan. And this plan is, as it is in motion, the outcome is intended to complement the District 4 bicycle plan that was completed last year in 2018. And as this committee may be aware, Caltrans District 4 covers the 9-county Bay Area, and Contra Costa is one of those. And the plan in its current form, or in its draft form, kicked off last fall and is expected to complete in spring 2020. The plan is overseen by a working group comprised of transportation planning and engineering staff from around the district, and has periodic check-ins with the pedestrian advisory committee and bicycle advisory committees for District 4 as well, and that comprises a wider swath of stakeholders that are involved in that effort. Notably, a week from today, in the afternoon, I believe beginning at 1:30, there will be a joint meeting of the district pedestrian advisory committee and bicycle advisory committee to get a similar update, although Caltrans staff may have more information at that time. And it's my understanding that their staff are currently developing the existing conditions report. I do not know with 100% confidence if that report will be ready by next week, but it certainly is in motion, and they'll be available to address those questions in more detail at that time if anyone's interested. Meanwhile, while that report is being developed, there is an online survey that is available, and that survey is the result of a joint partnership with the UC Berkeley Safe Transportation Research and Education Center, also called SafeTrek. And they use a software platform called Street Story. And this, I guess, has been deployed in several studies throughout the region with success. And users or participants are able to visit this survey and can, similar to the Iron Horse Trail study, plot certain areas of concern or input that they consider worthy of further research as part of this study. So that concludes my verbal report on this item. It is informational, but certainly if there are any questions or comments, we can record those.
All right, thank you. Any of the board members, CBPAC members, have any comments or questions? All right, Bruce.
I plan to attend that meeting next Monday at 1:30, and everybody's welcome. It's a public meeting. It's on the 15th floor of the Caltrans building on Grand Avenue.
And I would like to add one note, actually. Even though we had been provided in the fact sheet in this attached to this report, the link shown on the screen is where it directs you to. However, I think they may still be in the process of adding the pedestrian plan link. So in lieu of that, there is a street story link also included in the staff report if committee members are interested in taking a closer look after the meeting. Certainly, any members of the public are available, including members of this committee, to submit feedback. It's streetstory.berkeley.edu. And so that is the specific link that Caltrans is working with Berkeley to take input on this draft plan. And if there are any questions, certainly feel free to contact myself regarding future PAC or BAC meetings.
All right. Thank you, James. Bill?
Just a comment. This committee has been pretty bike-centric, and I think this sort of thing is important to participate in for that reason. I think most of us are bike reps and concerned with those sorts of problems. I'm on the Richmond Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and we're fortunate to have a couple of pedestrians. We have a master pedestrian plan in the city as well as the bike plan, but it's good to have the ongoing input of people who, well, one of our members is blind, which is really helpful to work on some of these issues. So I think it'd be really good if we could participate in this a little bit more.
Actually, James, I have a question regarding this upcoming meeting. Is there any ability to have a teleconference about that, or can we call in if we can't attend in person?
My understanding is that they will provide teleconference capabilities. I believe in the past they have consistently. So if you're interested in obtaining the number, I'd be happy to forward any information I can obtain.
All right, please. Thank you.
Through the chair, also at this meeting, they're going to talk about micro-transportation, which is scooters. It seems to me scooters are the future. If we can get them out there and being used instead of having our elected officials say, oh, no, that's bad, kill that.
All right. Any other questions? Okay, Bill.
Just responding to that, I think sometime in the future, maybe we put on the agenda or something, the whole issue of scooters and boards, and they have electric unicycles, I don't even know what they're called, that have been, of course, as you know, creating some problems with some cities, and kind of get a overview of how the county is going to approach that, and how what this committee feels about that, and so on. Maybe an agenda item might be appropriate sometime.
Yeah, and on that note, this committee may recall that in May it provided guidance to staff on several countywide bike ped plan implementation actions, one of which is to hold a bike and scooter share forum this fall. But we anticipate that members of this committee would be invited to that. It will be a forum in the essence of inviting local planning and engineering staff to receive information, exchange information from other staff members in the Bay who have experience in this sector. And we can also take feedback from this committee at that time as well. We'll send more information as the date approaches.
All right. Yeah, thank you for that, James. I think if we have no other questions or comments, let's move on to item 3.0, MTC's Regional Bicycle and Pedestrian Count Protocol Shareholder Workshops. James.
Thank you again, Chair and Committee. This is an additional update regarding a rather recent event that took place prior to, or just as this agenda was going to publication, but nonetheless, staff considers the information valuable for this committee's knowledge. The Metropolitan Transportation Commission, MTC, is in the process of developing a regional bicycle and pedestrian count protocol, and it's intended to be used as a reference for agencies, organizations, and count firms in the future to try to create a more consistent application in terms of how, when, or where, when, and how to collect bicycle and pedestrian data. And according to MTC, during its webinar last Monday and Tuesday, they started this project as a result of myriad feedback over the years with concern from various stakeholders that the level of availability for this type of data and even the methods being used were perhaps inconsistent or just generally not as available as some would have liked. And so MTC is hoping to produce a more consolidated document that anyone could use on par with perhaps any other manual, such as the Highway Design Manual or similar. The MTC at this webinar announced that they have released draft guidelines and they're receiving comments until August 8th. So there's a couple weeks left in this comment period. And if this committee or members of this committee are interested in receiving those guidelines, you may certainly reach out to me. In fact, I could proactively just send that out to this committee if you would like to take a look. And the guidelines, as they're currently drafted, lay out a variety of methods that are tailored to the purpose of the data that is intended to be collected. So, for example, they distinguish between short duration and long duration types of counts, and within those there's a spectrum as well. Short duration could be as few as 1 to 2 days during the peak hour, depending on staff and resources, at least to be able to create a baseline at a certain intersection or corridor, and whether it's an urban or rural area or a highway interchange or typical arterial intersection. And then with those short duration counts, they show the appropriate methodologies or what they consider to be appropriate methodologies at this stage. And typically in a short duration, where you need to collect data rather quickly, oftentimes manual counts are, paper and clipboard or sometimes mobile applications are typically recommended. But then they get into more advanced technology as they seek longer term counts, infrared, magnetic sensors, because these are often installed on a more permanent basis, such as if someone's been to Market Street in San Francisco, they actually have a visible LED counter that tracks every single person that goes by, and they can get thousands within a peak period hour, or hundreds at least. And so these are the types of things that the MTC is looking to get feedback on. And so they, as I mentioned, August 8th is the cutoff for that. Next steps are that the final guidelines will be released in the spring 2020 after they've received comments from the 9-county Bay Area region. And so staff, again, recommend that this committee receive this report, and I'm available for questions or comments.
All right, thank you, James. Any of the committee members have comments? Bruce?
Yeah, the MTC Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee meets on, when is it, the odd months and a certain, it's a public meeting. I haven't memorized exactly when. It was last week. I was invited, but I couldn't make it.
Yeah, if I'm understanding, I think you're referring to the Active Transportation Working Group. Yeah, ATWG, they do have a bi-monthly meeting schedule. Even I have not memorized, admittedly, the precise time, but it is, I believe, on Tuesdays, the second or third Tuesday of each month. Either way, MTC does have their information available on their website. Most recently, because MTC is in the process of updating Plan Bay Area, the most recent meeting, I believe, was specific to that. The Plan Bay Area, the draft Plan Bay Area that they will be preparing next year.
All right, Bill?
Yeah, a couple of things. I was part of the lobbying for the pedestrian bike path on the Richmond-Sandfeld Bridge going way back. And of course, it's been delayed and delayed, and April was going to be the drop dead time. And before that, the concrete started dropping. I'm wondering, we have this, new method of counting, and I'm wondering how they're going to be used. Well, what I'm really worried about on that bridge is that it's a pilot project. And if they don't get enough riders, there it goes. So will the first thing is will the study introduce any kind of standards or suggestions or anything like that about the numbers that cross something like that, or other areas that are critical, whether they're going to get funding or whatever, or whether paths are going to be starting to be built, that sort of thing. And my second question is, you mentioned the infrared. I hope to heck they're not going to start using facial recognition technology. I'm probably being far too paranoid here, but I would certainly be outraged if they were going to do something like that.
Bruce?
I'd love to have my face recognized while riding my bicycle, Bill. And I'm the king of the paranoids.
You have a unique face.
However, my understanding is that this period of testing is going to be 4 years long, and that Marin County, the CCTA's equivalent there, wanted to shorten it to 6 months, and they got shot down. So I think it's still 4 years long, and both Marin County and Contra Costa County are scrambling to get bike paths and other facilities built to each end of the bridge so that it can actually work. And rumor has it that the MTC strongly wants to see this experiment work. And they want to use electric bikes. They'll have a stable of them on each end of the bridge so people can commute across the bridge using electric bikes and, of course, scooters. And I think 4 years is a significant enough time. I'm planning to go at least quarterly on my own just to be counted with the infrared counters.
Thank you, Bruce. Corey?
Hi, I'm Corey with WICTAC, and so we had been in talks with all the interested parties about the beginning of this pilot, and communication has kind of dried up now that the bridge has had some very serious safety issues come up, and they're going and replacing all the rivets and all that stuff. So I'm really not sure what the start date is. We haven't heard. No one has told us. It's my understanding though that this type of counts would be standard across the region, but you could still do specific targeted testing or counting for a pilot project like this. So, I think that they could be two different things, and perhaps the standards that are created for the region could help inform the ways that they do the counting on the pilot, but you can still measure the effectiveness of a pilot project, as a separate thing from this standardization that's going on in the region. That's just my understanding.
All right, thank you. Bruce?
Through the chair, say a little more about what you know about replacing all the rivets on the bridge. That's the first time I've heard of it.
I can't remember what it was, but there's a lot of construction that's going on right now. I don't want to speak out of it because I don't have it fresh in my mind, but I can forward you some of the information that I've seen about the construction that's going on to increase the safety of it. But there's some construction going on in it right now. Right.
It's we're going to redo all the expansion joints, whereas in the beginning they started to do just 2 or 3 where the concrete was coming down. Fact is that the concrete all through the bridge is 50 years old or whatever it is. So they're going to do every one of them, and God knows how long that's going to take.
So the rivets I misunderstood that, or?
I just said the wrong word.
Okay. Phew. Replacing all the rivets would be a big job.
Yeah.
Chair, if I may.
All right, James.
To Vice Chair Pinkham's point, or questions rather, regarding the degree to which these will be standard, and also whether there will be funding that may be considered as part of this program. Also, Committee Member Riley's comment is accurate in terms of standards that will be developed, although there will be flexibility for context-sensitive approach, and certainly agencies and stakeholders that have ideas for how that might be best developed are encouraged to comment on that. Secondly, with regard to funding, MTC did address this in the webinar, although while they are interested in a potential funding program, such as, and not even dollars and cents per se, but potential equipment loan program perhaps around between jurisdictions so that they can maximize resources, since not every jurisdiction may be able to afford or maintain some of these more advanced counting technologies. That's under consideration. In terms of a dedicated funding program, that would have to be addressed probably towards the latter stages of this guideline development, or perhaps after the guidelines are developed, MCC may take up the question of how they will fund it on a permanent basis. That is my understanding from the most recent discussion.
All right, thank you, James. Suzanne?
The Park District is a big proponent of counts. I mean, I think we all understand that whether it's a funding program from MTC or grants from other agencies, the count information is crucial in both getting the grants and then proving the effectiveness of the projects. And we have been able to, on some new trail projects, we have been able to ask for funding as part of a grant project, or as part of the grant for the overall project, to purchase some of the eco counters. I think is the main one that we're using. But just if your agency you're working with, our partner organization is applying for a grant for construction, maybe include that as part of the way that you can track your effectiveness of the project.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Okay, thank you, James. We'll move on to item 4.0, the Concord Naval Weapons Station transfer of land to the East Bay Regional Park District.
Yes, this will be very brief on my part, unless Committee Member Wilson would like to add anything. Basically, we thought it would be of interest to this committee to provide the press release that is in the packet straight from the Park District website, that there are over 2,000 acres that have been transferred from the U.S. Navy to the Park District. And this is quite significant, obviously, in terms of the geographic area that can now be potentially turned over to Parks and Recreation. And it is our understanding that an additional 327 acres will be also transferred sometime at a later date. But this is for your information as well. And I'll just open the floor for questions or comments.
All right, any questions for either James or Suzanne regarding this transfer? Bill?
Yeah, when I read about that, my very first reaction was, gee, what sort of roads do they have, and what sort of bicycle paths, possible bicycle paths do they have, pedestrian areas to run and all that sort of thing? Are there people looking at that, those possibilities, or should we be looking at those possibilities?
Suzanne?
There's a land use plan that's been in the works, and there is actually a trails focused component of that. We've looked at it in our department, as well as I can't remember the name of the private consulting group that helped us develop the plan. But there are major regional connections. For example, connecting the Delta Danza Trail down. That's going to be a huge gap closure when that happens, and connecting into City of Concord as well. There's a plan. I'm going to guess it's on our website, but I can send that link out.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you. We'll move on to item 5, which is an update on the development of an initial draft transportation expenditure plan for Contra Costa County.
Thank you, Chair and Committee. This is a report to inform the committee that since the last meeting, or your last meeting in mid-May, the Authority Board authorized staff to prepare a new transportation expenditure plan, and if approved by the board, the TEP, as it is known, would be placed before Contra Costa voters in March 2020 as part of the primary election ballot, and would require a 2/3 voter approval to pass. The initial draft TEP was released on July 11th, and the board reviewed this initial draft at its meeting last Wednesday on July 17th. And as currently proposed, the TEP would implement a half-cent countywide transportation sales tax measure for a 30-year term that, if approved by the voters, would begin imminently in 2020 and run through 2050 for a total of 30 years. And during this time, the measure would be anticipated to generate over $3 billion in revenue. Over the last several months, authority staff have conducted public opinion polls and engaged public outreach with stakeholders. And the result of polling indicate a preference for better and more reliable transit, traffic congestion reduction, performance-oriented outcomes, as well as transparency and accountability to taxpayers. And all of these are included in the draft TEP policy, or ways to address those. What may be of particular interest to this committee is the fact that in the initial draft TEP, 11% of the program and program funding are dedicated to active transportation, bicycle and pedestrian. So over a 30-year life of, with $3 billion in revenue, this amounts to approximately $329 million for bicycle and pedestrian programs and projects. This would be significantly more than the most recent measure, Measure X, that was proposed 3 years ago. The initial draft TEP also includes the Complete Streets and Vision Zero related policies. And this committee may recall that in its guidance to staff and the Authority Board last year, it recommended that a Vision Zero framework be included as one of the priority implementation action items. And so with the board blessing, staff intend to pursue that Vision Zero framework in the upcoming year. So to conclude, there are several milestones that we'll be approaching in this TEP process. The most immediate are telephone town hall events. And these will provide opportunity for the public to call in a live town hall and registration is available at the CCTA website, and participants can call in to learn more and ask questions about the TEP. The first town hall is scheduled for tomorrow evening, July 23rd at 6 p.m. And there will be 3 additional town halls scheduled. In fact, they are scheduled now for Wednesday, July 31st, Tuesday, August 6th, and Thursday, August 8th, all at 6 p.m., including tomorrow night.
James, sorry to interrupt, but can you specify, the town hall that's tomorrow for which sub-region is that? Because I think each town hall focuses on a sub-region. That's a good point. I will have to send immediately after this meeting more detail about that. I had that with me, but it's not with me at this moment. Okay, that's fine.
Thank you for noting that. And there was also, though, aside from the town hall schedule, there was also an online survey that is readily available right now where stakeholders can input their feedback, and that is available at ccta.net/theplan/ So if one were to go to ccta.net, our home web page, simply scroll down to the middle of the page, and there is a colorful image that says "Our Future" or "The Future" for CCTA, and you click on that. It takes you to a dedicated web page for the TEP, and the survey's there. And then the authority board also has 3 scheduled meetings in August, back to back to back. Wednesday the 7th, Wednesday the 14th, and Wednesday the 21st. Each of these are anticipated to include special discussion of the TEP, and the agendas will be released the week prior. It is anticipated, according to the TEP schedule, that the board would approve the draft TEP on August 21st for distribution to local jurisdictions for concurrence and comment. So that includes my verbal report, and I'm available for further questions.
Corey?
Oh, sorry. I was just going to ask you quickly, where was that again? I missed that. The public meetings are...
Oh, the public meetings scheduled in August will be here in this boardroom, and they will be official authority board meetings with the full board here.
All right, Corey?
Hi, thank you for that. The 11% for the standalone, the 11% for bicycle and pedestrian facilities, is that a standalone line item, or is that a combination of other line items? I'd seen numbers around for like 5%, 8%. 11% is higher than I had seen previously.
Yeah, so 11 is a combination thereof. There is the most prominent line item is for 7% improved walking and biking on streets and trails. However, in the initial draft TEP, there is an expenditure plan summary on page 4 and 5 when you have an opportunity to look at it. And one of the columns lists other line items where bicycle and pedestrian funding is included. So, for example, excuse me for a minute while I line up the table here. Improving traffic flow on major roads. That does have, while the term traffic is used in that, it does implicate bicycle and pedestrian improvements. The exact dollar figure is not listed, but it is intended to be included as part of that type of program. Another example would be seamless connected transportation options. And so, but the largest program that is standalone per se is approximately 7% of that 11%.
Any other comments? Bruce?
I have been attending the Transplan meetings discussing this and the CCTA full board meetings discussing this, and I have to say I am very impressed with the overarching desire of CCTA to encourage people out of their cars and to use alternate methods of transportation. And then they said, oh, wait a minute, we don't have many other methods of transportation. We better hurry up and build them. And that's where the 11% came from. And I'm 100% in favor of that. The problem is we got to get the voters to vote 2/3 yes. Otherwise, we got nothing.
All right, thank you, Bruce. Suzanne?
I believe the Park District has a specific line item in that draft. Can you tell me if that falls within the 11% and what the percentage is?
For the Park District specifically?
Mm-hmm.
It may take me a moment to verify.
I think the last I heard, 1/5.
I did see a trail line item, and what I can do is, it may be more efficient if I look it up, and I'll be happy to provide information for the whole committee based on that question.
Thank you.
I apologize.
Appreciate it.
Eric?
I guess following up with that question, I understand there is a trail line item, but is that specific to the park district? Because there are other trails also in the county that are not necessarily maintained by the park, but by local agencies as well. So would that qualify, or is it just specifically trail items are equals park district?
I will get clarification
Right.
on that, but thank you for posing the question.
Actually, I think if I'm not mistaken, there's a line item for trails that's like a general category, but then East Bay Regional Parks gets a cut off the top, correct?
It is correct. I can confirm that, similar to Measure J, it is currently proposed that the district would have access to an off-the-top percentage in order for ongoing rehabilitation and maintenance. Although, also to clarify, this is the initial draft, and so we don't know precisely what the approved percentage will be at this very time. But I'll be happy to clarify as best as I can each of these trail-related questions after the meeting.
All right, thank you. I do have one other question. If you could, you mentioned Vision Zero, and that's included, will be included in this draft TEP, and we talked about that last year. I'd also like to hear, other, I guess, components, from the Countywide Bike Ped Plan that was adopted last year. How is that going to be? Is there going to be any components of that are going to be implemented in this TEP or funded by the TEP?
Well, the Vision Zero element of this TEP, as it's currently proposed, is at the policy level. Basically, as currently written, the Vision Zero policy would basically create standards and procedures for local jurisdictions to proactively mitigate traffic safety whenever they are proposing a measure-funded project. And it's still to be determined precisely whether that would be as part of the initial project grant package or whether that would be part of the peer review or a combination of both. But it is possible that there may be a checklist that is added as part of the Measure J growth management checklist or a standalone checklist. The mechanism is still to be specified, but those are ideas that are included in the policy, and that policy is written out in the initial draft for further review, and it may undergo additional iteration based on the feedback that we receive.
And not to mention Vision Zero, I guess would that be tied in as well with, I know there's also a complete streets policy that's proposed in the TEP. Would it just be one, like, all integrated together because they're related, the complete streets and Vision Zero?
Yes, definitely when the Vision Zero policy, or as the Vision Zero policy has been crafted, it's been crafted in sync with the complete streets policy to be as consistent as possible with state law, AB 1358, the Complete Streets Act, and also Vision Zero best practices that we're aware of from the Vision Zero Network, which is an international organization that has membership among many U.S. and international cities. So we're certainly cognizant of the overlap and certainly intend to keep it that way.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this draft TEP? All right. We'll move on to other business. Does any of the committee members have any other items to bring up? All right, Bill?
Yeah, coming up is a fun event, Bike East Bay's annual Pedal Fest. It's on August 3rd at Jack London Square, 11 to 5, I believe. And good time is usually had by all. There are all kinds of crazy bikes there. People weld 5 frames together, that sort of thing. There are amphibious bikes. One year they had a round bike where 4 or 5 people sat around and somehow they geared it so it went straight. There are demonstrations. There's BMX kind of stuff. Not a minimum of speechifying. There's, of course, valet bike parking if you bring your bike, and it's, of course, a very easy ride from 12th Street BART or 19th, whatever. Let's see, what else? Anyway, you can check Bike East Bay's site, and there may be more information there, but I highly recommend it. Good time said by all.
All right. Thank you, Bill. Any other questions or comments?
Chair, if I may.
Okay.
Even though it's not in the past, the agenda has listed lunch. When this meeting adjourns, there is, courtesy of Panera Bread, some nutrition.
Thank you. Actually, I do have one question. You know, you briefly touched upon it earlier. You know, at the May CBPAC meeting, you discussed, next implementation actions for the Countywide Bike Ped Plan. Can you give like a general update on, like the upcoming schedule and if we're going to continue with these 3 implementation actions?
Certainly. At the most recent authority board meeting on July 17th, we presented the scopes of work for the 3 priority action items that were advised by this committee and subsequently authorized by this board. And they are, as I alluded to earlier, the Bike and Scooter Share Forum, and we are aiming for a late September or October timeframe to conduct that forum. As it's currently scoped, we're looking at a half day, probably an entire afternoon seminar type event that would be akin to some of the planning director seminars that we held over the last year or so here at CCTA to chart, basically exchange information on or in this case, exchange information on what cities in Contra Costa may have experience with this type of micromobility, whether cities are receiving interest from private companies, and if they are trying to find out how they can plan and adapt policy, and also just generally best practices. So we are interested in inviting other agencies outside of Contra Costa that have been involved to lend some insight as well. And so it's quite possible that as a result of this forum, additional forums could occur, or some policy may be drafted either at the countywide or local level. That remains to be seen. The second priority action item is developing a Vision Zero framework and systemic safety approach. And this will be a lengthier effort that, in this case, we would retain Fair and Peers, who helped develop the Countywide Bike Ped Plan, because they do have a robust data set as a result of that plan and can help us develop technical procedures that could be conveyed to the local jurisdictions on how to implement Vision Zero practices in their daily planning and engineering efforts. And this ties into at least as proposed in the TEP, the Vision Zero policy as well. And we are also, to that point, aware of the county's own Vision Zero policy development, and so we'll be in touch. That we anticipate kicking off this fall as well, but it will be a longer process. And I believe, if I recall correctly, we would be looking at adoption of the Vision Zero framework with technical procedures sometime in late 2020 or early 21. And then the third priority item would be a pedestrian needs assessment. And this task would be staggered with the Vision Zero task, also with Fair and Peers assistance. And the reason for that is because there will be some existing conditions and data development in the Vision Zero process, and then that can be used that can be incorporated into the pedestrian needs assessment effort. But in order to avoid spreading ourselves too thin, we are staggering those two efforts. So the pedestrian needs assessment probably will not be completed until later in 2021. So we do see an 18 to 24 month time frame between the three of these. And that's not to say also that there are other implementation actions in the countywide bike ped plan that will be ongoing. Technical assistance as requested by local jurisdictions, and also other areas of implementation. These are just priority actions where we'll need to dedicate a fair amount of staff and funding.
Okay, thank you. All right, Bruce?
Yeah, a question. The micromobility bike share, scooter share in late September, will that potentially be midday on a work day, on a weekend, or on an evening?
Most likely a weekday during typical business hours. We have had success with our planning director seminars that were held in 2018 and 19, inviting local staff and, in some cases, members of the public who were interested. And it seemed to generate the level of input that we were seeking. And also we think that would maximize the availability of other agencies as well, as opposed to a weekend.
All right, Bruce?
Could you invite all the members of this committee to that meeting, please?
Yes, we can make note of that and do so.
All right, Eric?
Just something I've been thinking, maybe for a future meeting agenda. I know we've been talking a lot with the TEP and just the bike and ped plan, ways to implement new routes, bike lanes, facilities, trails, and all so forth. The intent to connect, get people out of their cars, more comfortable to use their bike in alternative modes, including scooter share and bike share, whatever is coming out in the future, who knows. But one of the things I'm always kind of curious to see is, because given that specifically where I work is Central County, where all the roads are more or less built out, you're constrained to work within existing right-of-way. Sometimes you just don't have the physical space to widen, to build some of the optimum facilities that we would like, where traffic calming becomes more of the critical options, where you're trying to reduce the speeds, especially residential collector streets, and wondering if it's an interesting topic to discuss or at least get input from, to see what options have been done throughout the county by different agencies to see how we can just generally reduce the speeds on roadways. Because, I've walked, ran, biked, used scooters, other parts of the world, and most of these places don't have dedicated bike lanes per se, but as long as the speeds are relatively slow, safety is not as concerning as we'd like it to be, as we think it is. So kind of curious to see has this committee, people who've been on this committee longer than I have, has that topic ever came up regarding as a way of improving bike and ped access? And if not, is that something we'll be interested in?
Well, one idea that comes to, I don't know right away the history of that level of discussion at this committee at least, or the board for that matter, but perhaps based on that prompt, if this committee was interested, staff could come back. The next CBPAC meeting would be scheduled in September, could come back with perhaps ideas for how that discussion might germinate, whether that's a different type of forum, whether that's a policy paper, or perhaps whether the Vision Zero effort that's scoped and approved by the board to begin this fall could investigate typologies and types of facilities that would best accommodate where there is no right-of-way, what kind of method could be
right, like a toolbox, basically opening another realm of toolbox for certain types of facilities where, even bike lanes, for example. We're talking about buffer, class 4 now, but the intent really is to, if you can just slow down traffic in general, and not saying force them to slow down, but just intuitively help drivers slow down, that will do just as much benefit sometimes, if not more, than even a separated facility. There are a couple of streets I can think of where you can put buffer bike lanes, but unless it's separated by a concrete barrier, the speed differential is 30, 40 miles between vehicles and bike lanes. It's still not perceived welcoming for all users. And so I know specifically for Pleasant Hill, where I work, I mean, traffic calming is critical along establishing safe pedestrian or bicycle routes, just as important as bike lanes on arterial streets. So I'm just kind of curious, if coming at a different angle, really. That's kind of the intent of that comment. Thank you.
And just to add to that, because, in the bike ped plan, I think, Eric mentioned a toolbox, and I know there's a toolbox component to the bike ped plan, and I don't remember off the top of my head if there is a part to it that identifies, like best practices and, like infrastructure best practices. But going back to what Eric was saying, if this has been discussed, I've been on this committee a few years now, and I don't recall off the top of my head like an in-depth discussion specifically on what Eric's talking about. So I would be supportive of discussing this item at a future CBPAC meeting.
Yeah, I mean, usually such a topic is usually limited to traffic engineering realm, and it's not really standardized per se. A lot of out-of-box thinking. I know here in Piers, Alta, they've done. It's almost like a case-by-case design based on the particular roadway. But I'm just off the top of my head, I'm thinking like City of Berkeley, for example, with their bicycle boulevards. I mean, the only difference between bicycle boulevards and any other residential street is really the traffic calming measures that they specifically target along these streets to make it slower, less incentivized for people to use it as cut-through traffic, and indirectly as a side benefit, really pedestrian bicycle friendly. And so, again, see if there's a way for us to at least get the pool of ideas that people have been implementing over the years at the different agencies and get it together and see if there's some common thread or patterns that we can utilize moving forward, instead of just thinking about, class 3, class 2, class 4 facilities, which takes a lot of money, a lot longer time to implement. But sometimes if there are parallel streets to these major routes along residential streets that you can do traffic calming measures on and get the same benefit, at least immediate benefit, it could be something that would be beneficial on a countywide level.
Yeah, to the chair's comment, I'd gladly report back on what resources we have available already and what we may pursue, and leave it to this committee to advise on which of those resources or other ideas seem to be a good fit to help propel some of the improvements that you refer to, if that seems reasonable. Okay.
Absolutely.
Bruce?
Through the chair, thank you. As an individual end user of bicycles, would like to thank Eric for all the work he's done in Pleasant Hill along Contra Costa Boulevard. And in San Ramon and Danville and Alamo, there's bike lanes along there. And to the north into Martinez, there's bike lanes along there. We want to connect up the pieces. And as Eric said, there are problems connecting these pieces if we don't have enough right-of-way. Walnut Creek is standing in the way right now, but Eric has chunks just a couple blocks long that were designed in the 1950s that are narrow, and there's not much we can do without some serious curb and gutter and changing of the parking alongside in that shopping center I'm thinking of. Yeah. And so thank you, Eric, for worrying about this. And yeah, I think it's something that this organization needs to be concerned with.
All right, thank you, Bruce. Anybody else have any questions or comments? All right, if no other comments, we'll adjourn to the next CBPAC meeting on September 23rd. All right, thank you all.